Hi, everybody. This is Maxine Taylor, America's first licensed astrologer. And today, with Uranus in Taurus, I want to talk to you about Uranus, one of my favorite planets, not merely because it rules astrology, but because of the nature of Uranus. Uranus impacts our personal as well as our group spiritual evolution. Uranus rules Aquarius, which means it is a very humanitarian planet. It is innovative, inventive, psychic. It deals with sudden and unexpected changes in our lives that propel us forward. I call it the cosmic quantum leap forward planet, because that's what happens when Uranus circles the zodiac. Now, it has an 84-year cycle, which means it stays in each sign approximately 7 to 8 years. And I'm going to explain some of the different aspects that it makes in everybody's life. Now, an aspect between planets is the relationship between the planets. And while many of you are familiar with the major astrological aspects, some of you may not be. So let me describe some of them to you. The major aspects, that is the square, the trine, the opposition, and of course, my favorite, the conjunction, because my mantra is conjunctions tell the tale. So, when you are born, Uranus, the great awakener, is somewhere in your chart. When it forms the first major aspect is when we are between 20 and 22 years old. And this aspect is a square aspect. It is a 90-degree aspect. So Uranus moves forward 90 degrees and forms a square. Now, a square is a challenging aspect. A square, in many astrology books, is considered to be negative. I call it a challenge because it forces us, by the very nature of Uranus, to do something different, to change. And I love that. So, at age approximately 20 to 22, Uranus is going to square itself in the chart. It's actually challenging its own rebellion, because Uranus is the planet of rebellion. Now, for those of you who study astrology, you know that at 21, Saturn, the planet of reality and responsibility, squares itself in the natal chart. So this is a very critical time in everybody's life, because we have Uranus squaring itself and Saturn squaring itself. We're ready to rebel, and at the same time we're fighting authority, tradition. Do I really want to do what my culture tells me to do, what the authority figures in my life tell me to do? That's the Saturn square Saturn. Uranus says, listen, let's break free from this. Let's do our thing. So think back to when you were somewhere around 20 to 22, because that is when you had an opportunity to make a major shift, perhaps in your career, because at that age, this is when we're moving forward in our career. Maybe you just graduated from college, you've got your degree in your hand, and you're saying, I know I'm supposed to follow this path, but the Uranus square has me going this way. Look at that in your life, and you'll find that it was a turning point, a benchmark for you when you rebelled, perhaps, against what you were told you should and ought to do. Now, the next aspect that Uranus makes to itself is the trine aspect. And That's an aspect of 120 degrees. The trine is traditionally a benefic aspect. While the square can be challenging, the trine opens doors. So think back to a time of somewhere between 27 and 29, when you were 27 to 29. Now, I have to throw Saturn in again because the major events in our lives don't necessarily occur with one planetary aspect. So I'm throwing in a little extra here. Between the ages of 28 and 32, usually around 30, we have our first Saturn return. Saturn rules tradition, responsibility, reality, and when we have our first Saturn return, we are hit in the face with reality. At the same time that Uranus is saying, I'm opening doors for you over here in this direction. Our first Saturn return is when we grow up, when we either get hit in the head with a responsibility, or we see it as responding to our ability as a leader to express all of our gifts and talents. And that is what happens at the time of the Uranus trine to itself. Very exciting. Think back to that time in your own life. If you're approaching it, use it on its highest and best level just by knowing what it brings. Okay, the next aspect is a very interesting one. It's when Uranus is in opposition to itself. Now, the opposition aspect is either a balancing aspect or a separation from something that has been holding us back. So it's Uranus in opposition to its natal place in the chart. I want to mention a couple of examples. I'm going to go back to the trine for a minute and mention that a dear friend of mine built her dream home when Uranus was trining itself. Another dear friend of mine had a very powerful breakup in a relationship that he had thought was going to be a permanent relationship. He awakened, because Uranus is the great awakener. He awakened to the fact that the relationship was absolutely not what he had thought it was going to be. He saw that the person had presented themselves, had misrepresented themselves. And while the breakup was difficult, it liberated him, because remember, Uranus is the great liberator. And so if there is a separation or an ending to any relationship, it liberates you. Now I have to bring something else into the mix here. During the time that Uranus opposes or is in opposition to itself, this is a time that we call a midlife crisis. This is also the time that Neptune, the planet of wishful thinking and idealism and perhaps divine inspiration, is squaring itself. And this is a time when people say, I have no idea where I want to go, what I want to be. I'm confused. That's Neptune squaring Neptune. While Uranus is in opposition, this is an aspect of 180 degrees to itself, saying, I've got to bust loose. I need liberation. And Neptune says, well, where are you going to go? And the answer is, I don't know. This is the midlife crisis that many people experience. Now, before we get to the last square, Uranus square, right around age 60, well, let me go to the trine and then go into that. We have our second trine at age 55 to 57. And this is the time when doors open for you and you can start projects and feel like you're really moving forward, which you are in your own personal growth. Then at age 60, just shortly after that, we have our second Saturn return. And this is the second opportunity to respond to our abilities and put our true talents, our gifts into action. At the very same time, we have a Jupiter return, and Jupiter is optimism and joy. And so we have Saturn, reality, Jupiter, opportunity, optimism, expansion, moving into aspect and giving us a feeling of balance, which prepares us for the final square. And it's an upper square, but same type of action. It is a square that says, I've got to bust loose. This is between the ages of 63 and 65. Perhaps you've retired. Perhaps you're free and you're saying, now, what do I do? You may be approaching retirement and saying, I can't wait. The rebellion that Uranus brings is in full flower, full bloom. And this is the time when you bust loose. Now, the final aspect with Uranus illustrates, I think, the most powerful aspect we have, and that is the conjunction. That's what at age 84, when Uranus returns to its natal place in your chart, and you are able to experience a rebirth, a total new start. Nowadays, we're living longer, we're living better. And so many people have had this wonderful Uranus conjunct Uranus, a Uranus return. Again, it occurs only once in a lifetime. And it's very exciting because as Uranus circles the zodiac, what I have found, I've experienced it and I've observed it, is that people feel more and more liberated, freer, less concerned with what other people think, and more concerned with breaking free from any limitations, self-imposed or externally imposed. There are a couple of aspects, though, that I want to share with you that also happen once in a lifetime. Since the 84-year cycle, the 84-year transit of Uranus takes so long, it triggers different planets in our chart, and it triggers two areas of the chart that are so important. Let me just use this chart as an example. I could use any chart. When Uranus sits at the very top of your chart on your midheaven, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to break free from your career, to feel more liberated, whether financially, mentally, physically. It is an opportunity to truly express your uniqueness in your career. Now, it doesn't have to be a paid career, because the midheaven is what the world sees of you. And what it sees is somebody who is comfortable in their own skin and doing their own thing. It's fabulous. Another placement that is vitally important is when Uranus sits on your ascendant. The ascendant is the most personal point in the entire chart. It represents your physical body, the way you present yourself one-on-one to the world. On the midheaven, it's how you appear in the world. Uranus on the ascendant indicates liberation from the physical. In that, it can change your appearance, it can change your style. I remember when Uranus was on my ascendant many years ago, and I learned this firsthand. I was on TV, and a friend of mine told me she was watching me on TV, and she didn't know my chart really well, but she said, she knew astrology. She said, Maxine has Uranus on her ascendant. When Uranus is on your ascendant, You are more magnetic, more charismatic. Your energy is so incredible. Now, any energy that you put forth sends out ripples uh, wherever you are and influences the people near you who then, share it perhaps with other people just by being near you. I remember thinking at the time Uranus was on my ascendant, when I would walk into a room, I was shocked because people would look at me as if they'd never seen me before. And I remember thinking, what's going on here? Why am I suddenly the focus of their attention? Am I having a wardrobe malfunction? I seriously thought that because it was stunning. And you think back to this. Was there a time in your life when you experienced that, when you walked into a room and people just stopped talking perhaps? They looked at you. And on some level, they wanted what you had. They were drawn to you. Perhaps that was the time that Uranus was on your ascendant. This is a major change for you when you are liberated. So, I hope that this has given you an idea of how awesome Uranus, the great awakener, is. Because when it occurs, when it triggers anything in your chart, it triggers it quickly, it activates it, and then it moves on. So, I hope this is helpful to you, because wherever Uranus is in your chart, it is right now, it's helping you with your own personal spiritual evolution. And as you evolve, so the world evolves. And if I haven't worked on your forecast yet and on your own personal forecast, you might want to go to my website, MaxineTaylor.com, and get together with me for a personal reading on yourself. So, dear friends, until we meet again, may the stars shine brightly on you and yours. Bye for now.